Mainstream Mental Health Radio with Dr. John Huber.
What do you think you are, crazy or something? Well, you're not.
We're on a mission from God.
News, issues revolving around mental health. Dr. John Huber, a mental health professional for over 20 years, the chairman for Mainstream Mental Health, a clinical forensic psychologist, and a psychology professor at Texas State University. Breaking the silence of mental health, one day at a time, discussing the human condition, providing a sounding board for mental health issues, and making mental health mainstream.
You got a gift, my friend.
Now it's time for Mainstream Mental Health Radio.
Let the healing begin.
With Dr. John Huber. Listen to Mainstream Mental Health Radio with your host, Dr. John Huber. Check us out on social media, Google+, Mainstream Mental Health, Instagram at Mainstream Mental Health, Twitter at Mainstream MENTL, and search for Mainstream Mental Health on Facebook. Please tune in every week to Mainstream Mental Health Radio with your host, Dr. John Huber.
Good afternoon. You're listening to Mainstream Mental Health Radio Show. I'm your host, Dr. John Huber. Don't forget to follow us on mainstreammentalhealth.org, and you can find us at Blog Talk Radio and iTunes, as well as the Mental Health News Radio Network. So please share our blog with everybody you know, and if you'd like to listen to other shows, Google us at Mainstream Mental Health Radio. You can find other interviews that we gave as well as did. So today is another one of those days that we hate to talk about. Here in Texas, about 30 miles southeast of Houston, we've had another school shooting incident. The death toll at this point is up to 10. It's very tragic. There not only have been shotgun and pistols, but also the news has been talking about finding bomb-making material and maybe some actual bombs involved in this. They believe at this point that there may actually be some accomplices with the individual that they've been able to track down. So we're waiting to hear from that. At the same time, though, it's another one of those knee shakers. If you're a parent, if you know anybody in any public school in any state in the United States, so we need to pay attention to this. As we look at all of these shootings, just recently we've had approximately 3 shootings in the last 8 days, and as we go through all this, there's some things we need to take into consideration. One of those things is get it off your chest. In other words, talk about it, okay? If you're concerned, you're having stress, don't be afraid to talk about it. Ask for support from people who care about you and who will listen to your concerns. Giving support and care can be comforting and reassuring. It often helps to speak with others who've also shared your experience so you do not feel like you're all by yourself and all alone. Turn off the news. Get away from some of this stress. That oftentimes is the best thing you can do. You want to stay informed, but you need to try and limit the amount of news that you take in, whether it's from the internet, the television, newspapers, or magazines. And while getting the news can inform you, it also can overstimulate you, it can overexpose you, and increase your stress. And we have to pay attention to that. The images can be very powerful in reawakening previous feelings of distress that we've all experienced over the last few years. Don't forget, with all of this, to take care of yourself as well. Engage in healthy behaviors. Go exercise. Go for a walk. Get together with some friends. Go for a walk. Go play some basketball. Get the blood pumping. Clear things out. Avoid alcohol. Avoid drugs. All those things can suppress feelings, but they can also exacerbate anxiety and depression. So be careful with that. The other thing to do is to help others. Other people around you may be suffering more severely than you are, and A lot of times it's comforting to have friends and family to help with that. You can also find local resources if you're not physically able to help with the local resources in your community, in your local schools. If you know psychologists, ministers are also good at this point. These can help people who've been affected either directly or indirectly by the incident and may have other needs. So remember, helping someone often has the benefit of making you feel better as well as helping them. Next story I want to talk about is a little bit not as intense, but it can be for certain individuals. I'd like to talk a little bit about parents who suffer from mental health issues and how those may affect your children's friendships, okay? Parenting styles, parenting mental health problems, and parents with mental health problems, particularly with depression, can play a significant role in a child's ability to keep friends, especially in elementary school. And this is a recent study that was done in Finland. What they're finding, the data included 1,523 children and their parents. The researchers compared the mothers' and fathers' parenting styles, the depressive symptoms that they exhibited, and they used those to predict how long friendships formed in first grade, how long those friendships would last, and how quickly they fall away. So we know it's natural for children to make new friends and then drift apart. That is part of the life cycle over the years. And the study team found that on average, only 8% of friends from first grade remain friends on to sixth grade. But parents with serious depression, they could raise the rate at which the children's friendships lapsed each year by more than 100% above the average. So the researchers report this in the Journal of Family Psychology. Now, kids with parents, especially mothers, who are significantly more psychologically controlling than average, engaging in behaviors like using guilt or shame and or withdrawing love, for example, lost friends at a rate of 26% higher than average each year, year over year. So as we look at that, it's significant. So if you're suffering from depression, one of the things you probably should be doing is seeing a therapist, but also you might be interested in meeting with a family therapist or have your children meet with a therapist, not necessarily because they have depression, but they can learn how to cope and adapt and deal with some of the frustrations that may be there at no direct fault of your own just because of your diagnosis and your depression. All right. Suicide. With all this trauma, it's no surprise that suicide is back in the news. And what we see is that with people under the age of 17, suicide rates have doubled in the last 10 years. And girls actually account for 66% of the cases. And that's pretty shocking. We know that the number of teenagers and children hospitalized for suicide or self-harm has more than doubled in just 10 years. The data of 31 children's hospitals across the U.S. showed that around 120,000 under 17 have been treated for attempts to take their own life since 2008. And that's a pretty significant number when you start thinking about it. In 2008, suicide attempts or suicidal thoughts accounted for 0.67% of child cases in all of these 31 hospitals. By 2015, that figure had doubled to 1.79%. And that's all admissions to this hospital. That includes everything from broken arms to any kind of infections and disease. And that is a very large number increase, significant. We also see that a majority of these suicide attempts came in more recent years. And again, that number disproportionately affected girls, with about 2/3 of the cases involving females. So the study also suggests a shifting trend in the high season for suicides, and with more suicide attempts now being recorded during the school year, but not in summer, which is a new, interesting find, I think, in general. All right, just a reminder, you're listening to Mainstream Mental Health Radio Show, and I'm your host, Dr. John Huber. Hey, you're listening to Mainstream Mental Health Radio Show. Again, I'm your host, Dr. John Huber, and this is graduation season. We have a lot of people graduating all across the country, and if you need a little word of advice on what to say to your grad or what to say as you're becoming a grad, I can recommend a book called Give a Damn. Individually, we make a difference. Collectively, we change. The author of that book is Mark Lewis, and his 3 words for new grads seeking advice on how to find success may be a little untraditional, but it gets to the heart of what real success is about. Mark, thank you for coming on our show today.
Thank you, Dr. Huber. I appreciate you having me.
So, what inspired you to write a book called Give a Damn?
Well, it took me a while. I've been working on it for several years, but what caught me, not only in the business environment, but also seeing things in the personal environment, so to speak, is how people have reacted to other people and are not concerned about what they can do for others. So I saw so many examples in business, out and about, looking at people and what they were doing, that I decided that we need to change this behavior because the behavior seems to be going downhill, and we got to make that turn.
So what you're saying is you saw these people being self-centered in their decision-making, their business practices, and all that kind of stuff. And we have, as a country in the past, been successful at looking at what everybody's needs are and providing services for those needs, as opposed to just looking at ourselves and what's important to us. And that way, historically, this country has been very successful. And what you're saying is you're seeing a trend away from that, and we need to come back to it.
Yeah, and there was a great quote by Lou Holtz 50 years ago. When we were growing up, we had duties and responsibilities. Now people think they have rights and privileges. And the thinking process now is based more internally than externally, which means what can I do to my benefit? And I think what we need to do is switch that is, what can I do for your benefit? And in return, I'm going to get something in return based on doing that. But when it's expected, that's where the failure comes.
Exactly. And, those are words to live by. Doing things because you can help other people is intrinsically rewarding for lots of people. But I think there's a lot of energy in this world that brings it back to us and allows us to keep moving forward even without that demand for some sort of a payment up front kind of thing. So I think there's a lot to that. So,
you're right. And I think, Dr. Huber, is this learned behavior that we're experiencing at a very early age is a condition of how we react to things going forward. And I think technology, although it's been great for a lot of people, technology has been poor in terms of behaviors that we're trying to exemplify for our students as they get older.
I think that's so true. It is not setting a good precedent. It's teaching people not to be the social animals that we are, and I think we're getting a lot of dissatisfaction and disservice from that, even though it's occupying people's time and occupying their world. Those social media, computer games, and apps, and it's very disturbing.
Yeah, it's teaching a violent behavior that we typically didn't get when we were growing up 40, 50 years ago. When you think about the shows that are on TV that teach something that's not moralistic, like when we were growing up, Fathers Knows Best and Catherine Kangaroo, all these shows taught a moralistic attitude and how important that is. Now you're seeing Naked and Afraid, you're seeing Here Come the Kardashians. Those messages are not good, and I think that spurs violence.
Well, I think there's a lot to that, and it's scary to think that, we're just adding more and more to that. So what is the next step? I'm saying go out and buy the book. And what is the next step? What should our parents be saying to our grads right now?
Well, I think what's real important is we need to teach our youth at a very early age what it means to what I call give a darn, which means we need to teach these moralistic, what it means to do for other people, what it means to do for the environment, what it means and how that will improve people's lives and make them happier. By doing these things, it perpetuates itself. You're setting a good example, and those good examples can only be learned by other people. So if we set an example individually and we collectively can get together as a group, we can have a really big impact on society. And I think that's what we need to learn, and that's what the students need to learn when they go out in the workplace.
So have an impact on your world. And I think, one of the things I like to recommend people do in the first place is have a purpose. Find something. Don't just go through the motion. Have a reason for the motion. And it sounds like that's part of what you're talking about. Is that right?
I agree. A lot of times, you see this all across, especially in politics. People don't want to take responsibility for their actions or be accountable for anything. And so they try to do this, what I call protective behavior, that they lie or they try to cover up. They do the wrong things because they can justify it in their mind as being right. And if you can justify it, then it's okay to lie. It's okay to do these things that are wrong. We just can't get that behavioral message across, and society is going down that road. And that's what I'm trying to do with the book.
Well, that's a very good message right there, because I see it all the time with kids, little kids watching the news, watching their parents, watching storytellers and athletes and all these people put up as role models go through and do that type of behavior. And we're teaching those kids at an early age that it's okay to not be truthful and that you should expect people to lie to you all the time. And that's not a healthy way to live. It really isn't.
It's not, and it's up to the parents. And I have the situation where the parents aren't at home like they used to be several years ago, and that they're not providing that example. And I think a great way to do this is to teach us at a very early age. Have these programs in school that start at kindergarten, what it means to give a darn. And I'm writing a couple other books, Give a Darn 1, 2, and 3, that has that progression of what you need to do through K through 4th grade, 5th through 8th, and on up. And then you get to this Give a Damn. Now, Give a Damn may sound pretty strong, but it's a message. It's like the Me Too thing that we all can rally around as a philosophy that we can engage and think about it all the time.
And you know how we are with that type of rallying, and unfortunately, a lot of times we rally with mindless love for whatever we're rallying for. We don't even know what we're going behind. So I'm glad you've got books to support and to push your message on top of that. So I appreciate that.
I'm very passionate about what I'm trying to do. This is a long-term mindset or mind change. But if you can do one person at a time, and that person can make a difference with other people, it perpetuates itself. And that's why I have the slogan, like you said when we first started. Individually, we make a difference, but collectively, we can change the world. And that's what I'm trying to do. And it's a big, big initiative. How do I get people to buy in, learn it, implement it, and it'll be amazing what kind of impact you'll have on other people, too. When you think about this, what's going on in Texas, we could have probably somehow had an impact on this person, but he probably didn't feel appreciated. He had to go out and demonstrate something was negative. And I think that's part of the reason the violence and the behavior that's going on in today's society.
That's right. And, and again, we don't know enough about the situation that just happened this morning here in Texas. But if we look at all the other school shootings that have happened over the last, 18 to 20 years, there's one current theme: an absentee father. Whether he's physically present or not, he's not engaged with his children. And I'm waiting to see this. This may be an anomaly, but And it also, the police, the way they're talking today is there may be some supporters, some outside supporters for this individual. So they're out looking for people as we speak right now, is my understanding. So.
You're absolutely right about the role model. The role model, it might not be the parent, but I think there's a way for society, even if the father's not there, to provide those role models that can make a difference in society. And there's a lot of groups out there that are trying to do that and are doing that. And again, maybe my book can be that role model for that individual. And I've had people come up to me that, a perfect situation. There's a millennial. He bought the book. He gave it to his mom. They read it together. They sat down and said, Mark, I became so close to my mom after reading that book. We have such a great relationship now. Boy, that makes all the difference in the world.
That's right. Well, Mark, where can my listeners find out more about you and get your book? And if they need you to come talk and be a consultant for them, where can they get you?
I'm happy. They can reach me at my website at giveadamnbook.com. They can send me email at mlewis@giveadamnbook.com. I will respond within 24 hours, and I will make an offer. Anybody out there that wants a copy of my book, they really think they need it, the first 5 people that email me, I will send them a free copy of my book.
Awesome. I will put that out there. Thank you very much. And
I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. No worries. And so that wraps up our show for us today. I want to thank Mark Lewis for coming on with Give a Damn Book, and follow him at giveadamnbook.com. Don't forget to follow us at mainstreammentalhealth.org. And remember, life is what happens while you're making plans, so buckle up.
Thanks for listening to Mainstream Mental Health Radio with your host, Dr. John Huber. Check us out on social media, Google+, Mainstream Mental Health, Instagram at Mainstream Mental Health, Twitter at Mainstream MENTL, and search for Mainstream Mental Health on Facebook. Please tune in every week to Mainstream Mental Health Radio with your host, Dr. John Huber.